June 29th, Unified Year 1927, Imperial Capital BERUN. Rail plus road makes railroad. Much like the Royal Road or the Roman highways of yore, these are the arteries of states. In the modern day, railroads are aortas of steel spanning vast distances, linking cities to cities, and of course, the fatherland to the war front. The railroad is notable for connecting critical points and facilitating the movement of goods and citizens. More importantly, it organically binds otherwise disparate entities into a nation-state. To the empire, a land-based military powerhouse, there could be no better method of wartime transport than rail. Resilient and reliable infrastructure is the cornerstone of any war machine. That is what makes the railroad the source of our power. So to call Imperial Capital BERUN's front door, Central Station, the heart that pumps life through its network of tracks and trains might even be an understatement. After all, the level of strain this system is regularly subjected to would be far too much for a body of flesh and blood. It can only be sustained by a heart of steel, arterial railways, and a densely populated core that runs on steam. As far as Tanya can tell from her view through the window of the passenger car, which is slowly pulling into the station, there is no end to the stream of arriving trains, passengers jumping on or off them, and people bidding them farewell. Though it doesn't quite live up to the flowery language featured in the newspaper she just hurled at an empty seat in disgust, the scene certainly does speak to the strength of the empire. Most of the cargo being loaded must be military supplies. Succinct proof that this state, the empire, is steadily sending supplies to the front lines and receiving them from the factories. The view of the hustle and bustle outside the first-class window is the same as always. I guess I made it back. The deeply emotional words escaped Tanya's lips in a quiet murmur. What a fortunate turn of events that she was able to leave the Eastern Front before the dry season arrived, bringing with it renewed major combat operations. Though fierce fighting continues unabated on the Eastern Front, the military is at least maintaining the bare minimum of sending units back for reorganization and rest. This is why even the veteran Lurgan Kampgruppe has gotten a chance to return home for recuperation and resupply. Maybe Lieutenant General Zetor is looking out for us more than I thought. As if. Tanya smiles wryly. Our losses are too high to be ignored. And considering how much heavy equipment we need to replace, there's nothing special about being rotated out. Some heavy equipment needs to be transported separately, so Captain's errands and Maybert are buried in shipping documentation and requisition forms, all evidence that the bureaucracy is steadily working on our reorganization in the home country. Knowing that it means parting from the yells of the Federation soldiers, their unending assaults, and their bizarrely well-armored arsenal, even my warmongers must be happy to dig into some paperwork for a change. A light knock on the door interrupts those thoughts. The one requesting entry is First Lieutenant Serebryakov. Colonel, we've arrived. Beaming as she delivers her report, Tanya's adjutant looks incredibly happy for some reason. Maybe it would be more accurate to say she's carefree? Home at last. Yes, it's been so long since we were last in the capital. We finally made it back. Her subordinate's voice is cheerful, but Tanya clearly isn't in a good enough mood to smile back. This homecoming has its own share of issues. The temperature difference between the front lines and the rear may drive me insane. Tanya points meaningfully at the newspaper she just cast aside as she continues. When I read this, I didn't get it at all. True, things have become a bit complicated. Lieutenant, it is a form of kindness to call these people out for what they really are, idiots. I don't know who censored this, but apparently the folks in the rear have no idea what the real world is like. While aboard the capital-bound train carrying us away from the east, some part of my mind had been blinded by the abstract idea of safety in the rear despite the weight of what Zetor had shared. It was only after glancing through the newspaper being sold on the train that it became depressingly clear that I needed to revise my expectations. I can't believe the nonsense running rampant in the rear. It's staggering. We've been stuck playing with the commies in a salient on the forwardmost lines, so I suppose an information gap reminiscent of Urashima Taro was unavoidable. On the front lines, so far removed from civilization, there's no ready access to periodicals or news. But reading one now makes me feel like I'm going insane. Did the war break me, or did those in the rear lose their minds at some point while I wasn't looking? What do you think? How can anyone be talking about the superiority of the Imperial Army in the East with a straight face? According to this reporter, we're enjoying 3 hot meals of meat and hearty soup every day on the Eastern Front. Where the hell was I when that happened? Surely even my wincing adjutant understands. Censorship only allows the officially sanctioned version of events to be reported. Maybe we should invite the censors for a tour. I wouldn't mind letting them see what our meals are like for a day. It'll be nothing but trouble unless they start facing reality. Of course, Tanya doesn't need anyone to tell her that wartime newspapers are hopelessly biased and packed to the gills with propaganda. Moreover, I've known since long ago that they generally end up being excessively patriotic or hopelessly pro-war due to the naivete of censors. Even though it's been a while since I've gotten my hands on a newspaper, I believe I went in with a decent idea of what to expect. I thought I would simply have to read between the lines. To anyone with a bit of sense, the truth should be self-evident. Except it wasn't. If it were an article with an unacceptable tone, that would have been unpleasant, but still tolerable. How to interpret the truth is a matter of an individual's conscience and intelligence, after all. Freedom of thought must be respected. That's all fine and good. If that was it, there wouldn't be any problem at all. The description of meals made the whole article sound like a report from HQ. When even descriptions of imperial achievements and the overall state of the war litter the page with half-truths, I want to groan regardless of who may be watching. The moment the paper landed in my hands, I nearly ripped it apart in anger, but instead hurled it at my puzzled subordinate and called the orderly on duty to demand, either you bring hot soup and meat for all my troops, or you round up every newspaper on this train for me. The natural response was a mountain of papers. In other words, there would be no grand meal forthcoming. Upon amassing every newspaper on the train, anyone observing Tanya would probably describe her expression as a fearsome scowl. What a perfect face for disembarking in the supposedly pleasant rear. Lieutenant, propaganda is supposed to persuade others, no? Yes. Well, it appears that somewhere along the way, the propagandists started believing their own made-up material. This is what it means to be beyond saving. The idea of cultivating a spirit of perseverance to support the war effort isn't a bad idea in and of itself. But anyone returning from the front is almost guaranteed to have a thing or two to say after reading articles that claim they were fed 3 hot meals a day and all the meat they could eat. Ha! A heavy sigh escapes Tanya as she rises from her seat. Sorry to bore you with my complaints. No, the disparity between the mood on the front and in the rear is very palpable. I understand how you feel, ma'am. Between the polite smile and the way she replied, Tanya's adjutant really knows how to get along with people. In other words, she's capable, but not everyone is the same. Tanya's subordinates are human, too. That is to say, they are unique individuals. Even war nuts come in different flavors. Maybe that's why. She says, remembering something. My life would be much easier if everyone were as sharp as you, Lieutenant. Make sure everyone in the camp group is properly briefed before they go on leave. Yes, ma'am. Just as Tanya is replying good, she hears a cheer go up from outside the car. The soldiers must be excited setting foot in the homeland for the first time in ages. I understand that feeling very well. Sounds like everyone has to board. We should also get a move on. Tanya is an officer returning from the front lines, so her personal effects are in her officer's luggage, while any loot that might have counted as a souvenir from the Eastern Front is packed with the rest of the camp group's gear. Meaning all there is left to do is grab her bag. Then, ignoring the step, which is a bit high given her height, Tanya jumps down to the platform, solidly planting her feet on home soil. The beloved fatherland. The safe rear. It's what everyone longs for. Of course, Tanya is no exception. Every day away felt like 1,000 years, and she even saw this moment in her dreams. Excuse me, are you part of the Lurgan camp group? Can you direct me to an officer? HRM? You're not part of the general staff, are you? I'm with the Reichsbahn. May I have a word? I'm leaving it in your hands, Lieutenant. Letting my adjutant handle it, I once again fall deep into thought. I've been distracted by the idea of 3 hot meals, but too many other things require my attention. Yet on the Eastern Front, the all-too-crucial free time had been in desperately short supply. Readiness is born from redundancy. To achieve maximum performance, one must pursue both efficiency and redundancy. It's precisely because I don't have to worry about an enemy attack that I can think clearly. Of course, I'm not advancing a worthwhile project or doing human resource planning with an eye on a hopeful future, or even brainstorming a corporate branding strategy that will contribute to society. No, I'm spending all my time pondering an utterly unproductive war. What a waste of intellectual labor. The fact that it's unavoidable is especially loathsome. It's simple enough to start a war. Any fool can do it by firing a single bullet. Just look at Sarajevo. Even a wise man can be killed as the result of mindless stupidity. And the fool responsible rarely cares what the consequences are. It's precisely because they're so brain-dead that they're capable of pulling the trigger in the first place. People with unshakable convictions have dreamed of stealing themselves and reluctantly starting a just war since time immemorial. An idiot too certain of their righteousness and drunk on their personal brand of justice is sure to cause an awful lot of trouble for the world. It's simple really a rat race between dimwits acting like buffoons and the cleaners who have to go in and mop up the mess they leave behind. Lieutenant Colonel Tanya von de Geerchaf stands on the military platform in the imperial capital with only one thought on her mind. When a person becomes convinced they are the only sane person left, what sort of diaper should they have on hand? This isn't childcare or a nursery. Why should I have to worry about this sort of thing? Despite the outward frown, when I recall the anxiety I felt about socks on the Eastern Front, I resign myself to the notion that work will always creep in unexpected directions. Well, damn, this is pessimistic even for me. I managed to avoid sighing in front of the troops, but I've been bottling up so many worries that I'm almost convinced my mind is experiencing global warming. At least I don't have to worry about getting hit with a carbon tax. Shaking her head and looking up, Tanya notices her adjutant coming back. Personnel who move with such urgency are hard to find. But the report she hurriedly brings back isn't a good one. Colonel, the General Staff dispatched trucks for us, but apparently they're running late.
What?
Tanya reverts her partially furrowed brow. Never mind. Thanks, Lieutenant. We can wait here, then. Needless to say, tardiness is inexcusable. Being on time is essential to the smooth operation of any enterprise. And in the military, it's practically law. But this is the General Staff we're talking about. Presumably, there's a reason they're behind schedule. Snapping at the people who are hard at work won't change anything. Anyone who blames the messenger for bad news is either stupid, inept, or irresponsible. In any case, they're fools fit for the firing squad. Putting that aside, it's time to get down to business. Lieutenant, see if the Reichsbahn has somewhere specific they'd like us to wait. We're a large group. If we stay on the platform, we'll be in the way. Yes, ma'am. Shall I also proceed with sending our cargo along? Fine by me. And, if necessary, start making arrangements for granting the troops leave, too. That includes issuing the relevant paperwork. Time shouldn't be wasted. We have to do what we can when we can. Most of it probably has to go through the General Staff, but let's at least confirm with the Reichsbahn that there are seats for people traveling home. It's one thing to say there's enough space. It's another to actually know if we'll be able to fit our people on the trains. Then I'll look into the long-distance trains first. For now, we can probably have the soldiers apply themselves. If it's for leave, even the ones who hate paperwork will probably fill out the forms correctly. I want time off, too. I need to turn in my own request. If Lieutenant Colonel de Geerchaf hands them to Colonel Lurgen, and the application is approved in his name, even she should be able to secure some form of vacation. I really need to figure out my own vacation. Just as Tanya is about to cheerfully consider what to do with her time off, she comes under surprise attack. Reality never pulls any punches. Oh, there you are, Colonel. A casual voice. But its owner is one rank higher. He's a full colonel. It's been quite a while since we last met. Well, I suppose we've officially seen each other more than a few times if you go by the records, but…
Colonel Lergent?
Instantly raising a salute, Tanya snaps back into work mode. The colonel, who is supposed to be in Ildoa on a diplomatic mission, has gone out of his way to meet her. This can only mean trouble. You're back in the Empire, sir? The Lurgan Kampgrupp is in the capital on leave. There's nothing strange about me being here. He delivers the official story smoothly, but he's looking paler than Tanya has ever seen him. More importantly, his tone of voice. This man used to be much more serious. Uptight even. The change is remarkable. Was it the stress of war that caused this sarcastic, cynical attitude? War is far too uncivilized for the average person to bear without bending. That said, I shouldn't speculate. You'll need to report in at headquarters. We must make sure the official record is consistent. Of course, sir. But first, let me deliver some happy news. Kampgrupp, for your leave, we booked a resort. Seeing that he's caught the attention of all the soldiers, he raises his voice before he continues. The general staff insisted. And for those who would like to return home, we'll be supplying first-class tickets. You've all done a tremendous job. It's a short break, but I hope you enjoy your time in the capital. A wave of cheers and applause goes up. Amid the clamor of celebration, Lurgan grasps Tanya's hand in a formal handshake. You've also outdone yourself, Colonel. Thank you, sir. Nodding as if finding that response satisfactory, he raises his voice so the others can hear him again. The transport trucks are running late, but they should be here in 20 minutes or so. Maybe I'm jumping the gun a bit, but I have the ration coupons for your troops here. Go ahead and hand them out to everyone while you wait. Receiving a glance implying that she should make arrangements, Tanya immediately delegates the task to her vice commander. Major Weiss. I'm leaving that up to you. Yes, ma'am. Weiss moves like he's on a combat mission and gathers the officers to review what they want to do, leaving Tanya and Lurgan almost completely alone. A little pocket of space opens up in the middle of the station. Lieutenant Serebryakov, was it? Sorry, please leave us. Also, could you call a car? However, Lurgan doesn't seem like he'll be satisfied with anything short of complete privacy. As the colonel says, Lieutenant. Yes, ma'am. My adjutant is setting off at a brisk pace. I'm sure she knows exactly what's going on and will return with impeccable timing. Still, even if he has a request as an excuse, he's being pretty blatant about shooing her off. If he's insisting on being that thorough, my adjutant is quite trustworthy. Necessity demands it. What an awfully ominous thing to say. I'm here to brief you before you report in at the General Staff Office. Just 3 quick things. Good. He nods and proceeds in a grave tone. 1. A fierce debate is raging between the General Staff and Supreme Command over a major operation in the East. The fact of the matter is, we've very nearly lost that argument. The General is only barely hanging on. A major operation? He lowers his voice before continuing, as if to say, that's right. The setback of Operation Andromeda suggests the backbone of the Federation Army is sound as ever. So when the inevitable counterattack comes, we'll deal with it while trying to tighten up the lines. That was the original proposal the General Staff submitted for approval. He must be speaking quietly because he's conscious of those around us. But it almost seems as if the distress creeping into his voice is the true cause of his hushed tone. Supreme Command's response to the original plan was disastrous. They don't comprehend the principles of space and time. They're saying that if we want to give up ground to secure breathing room, they expect to see results. What does that mean, sir? They want us to pull off a revolving door, like we did on the Rhine front. The task this time is to recreate that operation, meaning the only thing that will justify a retreat is a large-scale battle to lure in and ultimately annihilate the enemy. The only reason I don't ask if the nation's leaders have lost their collective minds is because I've known the answer for a long time. Though the army and the government are looking at the same world, they no longer both reside in it. Where did it all go wrong? Anything that complicates the retreat will make it a high-risk operation. Even so, that is what's being demanded of us, results that will bring an end to this war. He delivers that surreal pronouncement in a tired voice. Colonel, sir, it can't be done. I never thought I'd hear you say that. It's a staff officer's job to differentiate the possible from the impossible. The revolving door operation's feasibility was predicated on the existence of the lowlands. The terrain is completely different in the east. I'm well aware. I've seen it with my own eyes, Colonel. Lurgan practically groans. The east is vast. That's the problem in a nutshell. The Eastern Theater is just too big. That's why the Imperial Army is engaging in maneuver warfare. It sounds impressive when we say we're outmaneuvering and destroying our enemies. It almost even sounds like we have the initiative. Our agile troops have the sluggish Federation Army right where we want them. It's the perfect propaganda headline. It could easily go on the front page of a newspaper. But we're not fighting maneuver battles by choice.
We've been forced into them.
The Imperial Army has no other option. On the sweeping Eastern Front, a textbook defensive position is a dream within a dream. There's simply too much ground to cover, meaning manpower, material, and just about everything else is in painfully short supply. Chronic deficiencies abound. Even divisions with exceptionally good luck that manage to stay well stocked aren't doing much better. Every area that needs to be defended is shorthanded. The inevitable result is that any defensive lines that do exist are concentrated around strong points. It would be more honest to admit that we're dependent on maneuver battles. But, Colonel, if that's the case, then how is the General Staff losing this debate? Simply continuing attempts to maintain the overstretched lines in the east will only cause irreparable attrition to our forces. In order to stabilize the front, the Federation's reserves must be eliminated. We can't abandon the lines. True, it's a stopgap measure, but we have no choice but to ask the Eastern Army Group to conduct textbook offensive and defensive operations. You'll have to excuse me, but is such a thing even possible? We already can't create and hold proper lines. That's the current situation in the East. It's been ages since the front had a definite form like the trenches of the Rhine. You can't conduct offensive and defensive operations to consolidate the front line if it doesn't exist. If they weren't standing in the station at the Imperial capital, nothing would have been able to stop Tanya from shouting. Anyone who isn't a total imbecile can see that it's impossible. You raise a valid point. Ultimately, we'll probably get stuck carrying out a dramatic solution by attempting an encirclement with the hope of annihilating the enemy forces. There's a conflict there, sir. You know just as well as I do that we have no hope of drawing in and annihilating the Federation Army. How are we supposed to surround the enemy on such a broad front? Encircling one wing of the enemy forces in the vicinity of Soldum 528 was already a bridge too far. What's more, Lieutenant General Zetor's direct input was necessary even during smaller operations in the east. A major operation? How much more nonsense are we supposed to endure? If needed, we could selectively let some of the enemy forces break through. If we give it our best shot without worrying about appearances, it might be possible. At least, we should be able to pull it off once. It's terrifying that he's saying all this with a straight face. The only explanation I can think of is that this armchair theory was thought up by someone who's completely ignorant of the situation on the Eastern Front. This isn't a game you can save and load to try again. I can't believe they're abandoning the safe option. So we have no choice but to lure them in? Lurgan's expression is taut as he silently nods, but Tanya has to point out something. If we misjudge the enemy's main thrust, it could start a chain reaction that ends with our entire army collapsing. There's nothing more I can say. Though, given my position, I can't say we have no chance of success. Let's say we somehow manage to make it happen. Even then, Lurgan cracks an uncharacteristic smile. So, there are times you side with optimism. Is that a laugh or a scoff? His tone doesn't make it clear, but his comment is completely unexpected. Taken by surprise, Tanya involuntarily stiffens up. I'm getting dubbed optimistic for attempting to argue about a hypothetical success? What brazen doublespeak. Just look at him matter-of-factly spouting the official stance while knowing full well this new operation is futile. Time for Tanya to push a little harder. Even I don't expect us to lose. But on the off chance we do succeed, whether that'll be the decisive blow that will end the war. The operation the Imperial Army carried out back in May, Iron Hammer, was a brilliant success. It was probably the greatest victory we could have hoped for. The Empire's goal has always been to annihilate the enemy field army, and Operation Iron Hammer was a crucial part of that strategy. You could say the objective was perfectly met. Fabulous results. Literal tons of supplies seized. An advance covering an incredible distance. But even that major victory wasn't enough to get the job done. On a fundamental level, the Federation Army is still standing tall. The beams of their foundation may be creaking somewhat, but they apparently aren't broken. Between the Empire, who has made the world its enemy, and the Federation, who now proudly stands alongside the rest of the world, there is a major disparity in the ability to replace losses. Even the precision war machine of the Imperial Army is hard-pressed by this brutally simple yet undeniable gap in national strength in a contest of total war. How are we supposed to escape our fate? That's why we want to make it a powerful blow according to the higher-ups, at least. Then the first thing we need is air power. We scrounged for what little assets were available and committed them all to achieve temporary aerial superiority in the east. But what does the sky look like now? It's all our forces can do to stay competitive over the heads of our troops. If the brass is ready to do something drastic, that's one thing, but what are the prospects of a large increase in air forces, or getting some reassigned from other fronts? I mean, no disrespect, but without control of the skies, a major operation in the east is. We can't concentrate any more forces there. The industrial region in the west would burn. It's out of the question.
Whoa.
Tanya's eyes widen in obvious shock. This seems like a risky topic to discuss on a station platform, but it clearly has to be addressed. Isn't that the heart of Imperial industry? Surely we've secured the skies over it. That used to be true. It would appear you aren't aware of the current situation on the Western Front. Lurgan emits a deep sigh. We have practically no formidable units left. Raw recruits and a handful of veterans are operating together in mixed formations. No one is conducting proactive operations anymore. Everyone has their hands full just holding out against the enemy. Pitifully, he delivers this chilling news with a smile. How else could such a reality be conveyed? This is the second thing I came to tell you. The air war in the West has taken a dramatic turn for the worse. We're even discussing withdrawing the Expeditionary Corps from the Southern Front, so we don't need to send air support down there anymore. We're in negotiations with Ildoa as well. It's not that we're low on surplus power. It simply doesn't exist.
We've run dry.
And right when we need to wring out every last bit of strength and scrape it together. I've been under the impression that the severity of the situation is more than readily apparent, but the next thing out of Lurgan's mouth is nothing short of paralyzing. In light of all this, you'll have to brace yourself once again. Even a capable unit like yours will probably stop getting replacements. Is that for certain? If nothing else, understand that getting high-caliber personnel will grow exceedingly difficult. To be blunt, there's almost no hope of getting any. Veterans are the core of any organization. This is the same as saying there will be no core. You're saying that even frontline units won't be able to get reliable replacements? There aren't enough trained personnel. No one has any to spare. We're missing the core, and there's nowhere we can go to get more. Even though general mobilization of the country's population has already happened, the louts supporting this massive army can't scrape together any more personnel, even with the Empire's intricate modern bureaucracy. The beginning of the end. A horrific possibility. The all-too-plausible idea sends an unbearable chill up Tanya's spine. This situation is too grave to laugh off. No new recruits. No recent graduates. This is what it'd be like if it wasn't possible for a company to hire kids coming out of college. It's only a matter of time until we go under. If this was happening to someone else, my first thought would be that this is a great chance to poach some talented employees. A funny thought. But since it's happening to me, there's nothing funny about it. As if to shed the awkward mood, Lurgan shakes his head and leans in closer. On a final note, this hasn't been officially decided yet, but I figured I should let you know. What is it, sir? If it's something that can make up for all this terrible news, then maybe he's found a solution? Tanya's fists are balled up tight as she listens with feigned comfort. I'm just sounding you out. So maybe brace yourself. Lurgan's tone is decidedly grim. Any hope I had been clinging onto collapses instantaneously, and I quickly revise my expectations. It's probably bad news. What's curious is that the army has never once considered Tanya's circumstances when dropping impossible tasks in her lap. Why would they be concerned about what she thinks all of a sudden? Posing it as merely a personal conversation and unaware of the terror he's inciting, Lurjan pushes on. I've already said this much, but I really do hesitate. Let me have your ear. Given the difference in height, he's almost crouching as he says this. It probably looks a bit scandalous, but oh well. Tanya quietly obliges and leans in closer. We may task you with bombing the capital. You mean a direct attack on Londinium? Aha, that is a big deal. It's a critical mission that requires the utmost secrecy, and we'll have to be prepared to make sacrifices. If they're expecting us to achieve results similar to our raid on Moskva, they need to realize that circumstances have changed since the beginning of the war. Colonel, that's not what I meant. Then what? Moskva again? Considering the ferocious resistance the commies are putting up, I really doubt that would succeed. It's no wonder a bit of skepticism slips into Tanya's voice. But apparently, even the pessimistic outlook is too optimistic, according to Lurjan. No, Genel de Gurechev. Lurjan lays a hand on Tanya's shoulder. Assuming it's not my imagination, the man is trembling. Ever so slightly, but still trembling. The target is here. He lowers his voice, hesitates due to their surroundings, and then finally points at the ground and repeats himself.
Here.
Where else could here be? I'm talking about BERUN, the imperial capital BERUN. Specifically, we'd like you to carry out a night raid on Supreme Command. It would appear that when humans feed incomputable data into their heads, they freeze. A bombing order is nothing out of the ordinary for Tanya. Attacking a target at night is a simple enough request. Sure, I'm not opposed to that. As a career soldier in the Imperial Army, Lieutenant Colonel Tanya von de Geerchaff is proud to have personally led an aerial mage battalion on a fair number of perfectly executed bombing raids. That being said, an order to bomb BERUN. The fact that we're still in public is gone from my mind. When Tanya replies, it's almost a scream. But this is the imperial capital? Despite devoting every effort to the contrary, her voice shakes. Still squatting but refusing to meet her gaze, Lurjan doesn't seem very composed, either. After a deep breath, he manages to say, we need to wake up the politicians. We won't ask you to actually drop bombs on them. The general staff is just eager for an exercise that will crank up the pressure. He hastily tacks on an explanation of their expectations. But even if they try to pass it off as an exercise, there's a limit to how persuasive that'll be. Excuse me, sir. It's quite a challenge for Tanya to keep her voice from shaking. You want us to play the bizarre role of some fake enemy? No matter how you look at it, this is one step away from a military coup d'état. Really, if anything goes wrong, it could end up sparking a real coup. There's absolutely no way we can target Supreme Command. If we were going to attack the Commonwealth capital, that's where we'd strike, right? It's the same logic. We need a reason for both the attacking and defending sides to get serious. So, we're going to cause a misunderstanding? We're making arrangements to chalk it up as a miscommunication. The General Staff has warned time and time again that the capital's anti-air defenses are far from tight, so we decided to run an exercise to demonstrate, but due to a miscommunication, the sirens go off. That's the idea. It's a plausible cover story. So they'll sound the alarm during our comedic interlude. But will Supreme Command really fall for it? This seems like lunacy. Who would volunteer to be part of a coup d'état unit all of a sudden? One wrong step and we'll end up in a court-martial as traitors. Tanya can't say yes to this even to be affably polite. I have no interest in being shot at by allies, especially if it's amateurs the horror. Shall I regale you with a tale of how an idiot observer tried to call in a strike on the Kampfgruppe on the Eastern Front? In our present situation, if idiots shoot at you, then maybe you should let them shoot at you, Colonel. The anti-air units will be alerted. Internal military communication is impeccable. It would actually be quite convenient if anyone does open fire.
What's he not saying?
This is already beyond dangerous. I beg your pardon, but I'm struggling to accept this. For starters, isn't this the same as openly advertising that the capital's air defense is vulnerable? We'd be practically inviting the Commonwealth to begin strategic bombing. Setting aside what will happen to the imperial capital for a moment, if the location where they feel safe is nearly bombed, I think even the politicians will be forced to open their eyes. Each and every word is brimming with disgust and hostility. Interesting. So Lurgen hates politicians, too. That's a surprising discovery, but it's in times like these that those things rise to the surface. And the fact that he's showing Tanya some true emotion is somewhat comforting. Unlike his much more frank opinion about politicians, his reservations about supreme command are more roundabout. As for why he's pushing this topic, there's a slight, but critical difference.
Colonel.
Are you serious about all this? If the ends justify the means, then it's clearly the quickest option. Meaning a viable alternative would be preferable? At his core, Lurgen seems like a sensible man. If that holds true, then his comment has far-reaching implications. And if the ends don't justify the means, Colonel? Couldn't you misfire some formulas in a way, on your discretion, that doesn't result in deaths? Well, that's not fair to ask. He turns back to her, and his face looks unwell as he forces his throat to work. He seems to have just barely gotten the words out. I beg your pardon, Colonel Lurgen, but Lurgen isn't the type to say this sort of thing. I wouldn't go so far as to claim I have a rock-solid understanding of his character. That would be arrogant. But I think it's safe to consider him a respectable citizen in possession of both good sense and morals. What could have brought about the sudden change in this man? Tanya is naturally compelled to ask.
What's going on?
Is he hesitating? His shoulders tremble slightly as he fishes out his cigar case. The success of Operation Iron Hammer was sensational. When news of it reached me, I was in Ildoa as part of our diplomatic mission there, and in that moment, I felt so grateful to you for opening a path to our fatherland's future. I'm honored, sir. Considering how the remarkable commie resistance has driven us into a corner, the joy was short-lived, but... Would you like a smoke?
Wait.
I can offer you one.
Colonel.
Due to various concerns of the higher-ups, the provisional ceasefire never materialized. That's all I can say. Muttering something that sounds like never mind under his breath, melancholy slips onto his face again as he stands. When he begins lighting his cigar, his movements are strangely aggressive. It should have been a shoo-in. Excuse me? My apologies. Phew. Lurgen exhales wearily after a puff of his cigar. We're soldiers. We follow our orders and do what we must when necessary. Sometimes I hate it, but... Not to be improper, sir, but I agree. For Tanya, the problem is extremely simple. People use the word necessary and demand too much. Though it's not the happiest thought, unlike many of our brothers in arms, we're still alive. Yes, we're alive. How wonderful. We should be more careful with human lives. Even faced with great need, throwing away lives can hardly be described as rational. Even when others fall, we must ready our guns and carry on fighting the enemy. Or should we drown ourselves in sentimentality instead? Honestly, you could say I'm already slipping under. Somehow lately, I feel I'm on dangerous footing. There are times it's hard to tell if I'm actually alive or not.
Colonel.
History will most likely allege I was out east. That's what I'm getting at. What is truth and what is lie? A man who spent a leisurely time in Ildoa, a land blessed with plentiful sunshine, will be remembered as someone who stood on the Eastern Front. That's probably what Lurgen is thinking in a moment of self-deprecation. I'm not a big believer in favoring those who get their hands dirty. It's painfully apparent how quickly an entire organization can collapse when no one is properly handling the unsung work that goes on behind the scenes. Honestly, what are these deaths for? Why all this sacrifice?
Colonel.
No need to pay me any attention. I'm just griping. Whining in public won't help us. He grumbles as he crushes the butt of his cigar under his boot. It's plain to see that this isn't exactly the time for Tanya to volunteer that she had been griping to her adjutant back on the train. She simply gives him a polite smile and listens. God knows what'll happen to us next. The only thing I put my faith in is this, Tanya replies, pinging her computation orb with a flick of a finger. The Alinium Arms Type 97 Assault Computation Orb. Unlike the Curse Type 95, this one is a gentle green color, good for both the body and spirit. Sadly, Lurgen has basically just told Tanya not to expect any more mages capable of using the model. The Type 97 requires trial and error from even the replacements who received minimal training. It's entirely possible that the recruits we'll receive from here on out will have a higher chance of surviving if we equip them with Federation orbs instead. What a horrific reality. Faith in yourself, eh? That's a fine belief. With a soft chuckle, he finally puts on a socially acceptable expression. At a glance, his persona is completely serious and sober. What an admirable mask. Let's report to General von RUDERSDORF. I'll only be there as a formality, but I can at least convey the situation in Ildoa. The time for sharing secrets has come to an end. Unbelievable. The moment Tanya reaches home, her stomach and self-restraint are put to the test. As someone who prefers to simply focus on work, this whole exchange has just been a reminder that office politics is nothing but trouble. Unfortunately, there's no escaping it. What a pain. Why can't everyone just concentrate on delivering the best work they can? It's vastly more effective for competitors to work toward a mutual goal rather than obstruct one another. Do they lack love for society? Life as we know it is only possible because society exists. Civilization is only possible because society exists. And ultimately, organizations of any kind are only possible because society exists. Ha. Tanya visibly emits a little sigh and shakes her head. Time to move. Staying here will only mean being in the way. Let's head out. Shall I have Lieutenant Serebryakov drive us? Of course. Sorry for the trouble, Colonel. Not at all, sir. I'm grateful we had a chance to talk. One moment, please. Saying she'll get things sorted out quickly, Tanya walks toward a subordinate and addresses him. Major Weiss, can I borrow you for a second? Yes, Colonel. He eagerly asks what he can do for her and Tanya swiftly gives him his orders. I'm taking Lieutenant Serebryakov and accompanying Colonel Lurgen to the General Staff Office. Sorry to ask this, but I need you to round up the troops and wait for the trucks. Understood. It seems my vacation will be starting slightly earlier than yours, ma'am. Fine by me, Tanya answers with a laugh. But remember, Colonel Lurgen organized it. I won't demand that the troops need to restrain themselves, but don't let me hear about any of you going too crazy, either. Weiss barks already, yes, ma'am. It's a bit excessive, but this point is worth emphasizing. This is the rear. I'm sure you're aware, but before you dismiss the unit, remind everyone about the gag order regarding the Eastern Front, and a general reminder to keep a tight lid on anything sensitive. It may be old news for the veterans of our battalion, but a good number of the ones who joined us partway are replacements. We can't have anybody accidentally leaking intel. It'd cause trouble for Lurgen. While it's not as if the capital is full of Russian agents like Tokyo during the Russo-Japanese War, as long as we don't become paranoid, it's best to stay vigilant. We're waging war against the commies and the John Bulls. Ah. Tanya swallows a little sigh. For a state like the Empire that has trouble keeping infiltrators out, information warfare is nothing but pain. I'll do what I can, and I'll pass word on to Captain Maybert and Captain Ahrens as well as Lieutenant Tosban. Thanks, I'm counting on you. All right, I'll say a quick word before I go. Tanya quickly gathers the troops, addresses them briefly, and finishes making arrangements for everyone to receive their leave passes and even stipends so they can make the most of their time in the capital on their long overdue rotation from the front. The troops are finally going to enjoy a much-anticipated vacation. Seeing a movie wouldn't be a bad idea. I'm sure refreshments will be on the house. The general staff provided the vouchers, after all. Lieutenant Colonel Uggers securing special tickets to send people home in first class. It's clear they're pulling out all the stops. All the troops have gotten their due as stipulated by military regulations. Of course, that even includes extra food in the form of wheat flour ration coupons expertly procured for the entire Kampfgruppe at the behest of Lieutenant General Zetor. Thus, Tanya's job is simple. The army is built upon the foundational idea that good service is rewarded and bad service is punished. In other words, She needs to apply for awards and promotions while she has the use of Colonel Lurgen's name. Aside from that, all that's left is to give the non-coms and the rank and file their real vacation. The general staff, including Zetor, who arranged for this return trip, is surprisingly kind to anyone who isn't a commissioned officer. It's one of the nice things about the Empire's system. That being said, aside from that one upside, there's plenty wrong with the Empire. For example, Tanya's feet practically drag as she boards the car Serebryakov has procured. She has no choice but to appear at the General Staff office. No ifs, ands, or buts. On top of that, a superior officer anxiously pressing his brow is sitting directly next to her. If my adjutant screws up just a little bit, maybe it'll be possible to postpone this meeting to a different day. Visha, I wish you could pick up on my feelings here. Huh. Tanya sighs. What is it, Colonel? Nothing, sir. After that unfruitful exchange, Tanya maintains a polite silence while sitting beside the similarly mute Colonel. The view out the window of the swaying car is, I guess you could call it, vividly monochromatic. Even when a faint splash of color briefly comes into view, it's painfully obvious that it's out of reach. When do officers get to go on leave? I want labor law reform.
Badly. Right now.
Then again. I shake my head slightly. My greatest desire, even more than unattainable labor laws, is an instrument of violence that will obliterate my problems. If possible, it would be great to ally with one that is both competent and reliable, something that can act as a meat shield to guarantee Tanya's safety. The Council for Self-Government that Zetor set up in the East. Well, it's not as if it's a pointless venture, but it's too bad it can't be relied on for anything besides defense in depth. I'm not fond of being purely reactive, either. It's also worrying that the army brass and the government are at odds. Is this a salvageable situation if there's a diaper on hand?
Huh.
Tanya swallows another sigh. I've never even raised a kid, but now I'm suddenly on diaper duty? It's work, so there's no room for complaints. Based on Tanya's obligations and contract, cleaning up this mess, as Zetor requested, is already set in stone. I wish I could at least submit an invoice for additional compensation. There's no room for complaints, but wait. Nursing care shouldn't be required here. Are the leaders at the core of the Empire in such a state that they not only need diapers, but also can't even put them on themselves? What an incredibly strange question. General Staff HQ, the office of Lieutenant General RUDERSDORF. So, even nonsense is a shock when it goes to extremes. The office's occupant, Lieutenant General RUDERSDORF, winced. To be fair, he had been doing all in his power to smile. The result? The poor twitching corners of his mouth said it all. You want to win the war, but you don't want to spend money, and you don't want to make sacrifices? That's asking too much. I need you to compromise on at least one point. If there had been a mirror in front of him, what a slack-jawed face he would see. The face his friend usually felt compelled to call brazen was twisted in distress. It wasn't long before agony crept into his expression, as if a doctor had just informed him he had an incurable disease. And, to top it off, there was the sound of his voice. It was a far cry from the arrogant tone he showed his subordinates. So incredibly frail. The irony was not lost on RUDERSDORF himself. We're at war. Even now.
Why?
He had to ask himself. It's strange. If it weren't for the idiots who chose not to stop when we had the chance, this would have been over ages ago. He had seen opportunity and hope and perhaps even a bright future. The Reich could have walked toward that light. But that path is closed to us. What a tragedy. The end he had seen.
Why?
Even RUDERSDORF, renowned as an unflappable man, felt compelled to pray. Dear God, why? Regrets and prayers won't change a thing. He couldn't stop the self-deprecating words from spilling out. Everything had slipped through his grasp. The possibility that should have been within reach had disappeared long ago. All that was left now were the dregs of a dream.
No.
There the man smiled bitterly. I can't give in. It's not over yet. It's too soon to give up. I still have the will to fight. Not yet, not yet. Not yet was all he could muster. Nothing more. But even that much was impressive. So what was there for him to get discouraged about? What he needed at this moment was an exceedingly simple method. He needed to resolve the situation and prevent problems from cropping up. Emergency measures to treat the infection. His task was extremely straightforward. The words that quietly fell from his lips caused RUDERSDORF to question himself. The objective was to protect the Empire. That much was obvious. But what the target should be was a murkier subject. It needs to be a surgical strike. Should we take aim at the part that needs it the most? They had no record of success when it came to eliminating the enemy field army. Delivering a surgical strike at the most crucial location meant taking a measure that seemed unforgivable. And yet it was attractive. I can leave the Eastern Front up to Zetor. He'll be able to hold for a while. But in terms of commanding the combat units, the West is rather worrying. If I could station someone reliable out there, could we succeed? Going beyond right and wrong, the man trained as a staff officer found himself thinking in the realm of pure possibility. After dealing with so much politics, his mind was stiff and rusty. Oiling it with operations know-how made the gears turn faster. For someone with a thorough knowledge of troop dispositions, it was relatively easy to estimate the amount of force necessary. In fact, he could make those calculations with peerless accuracy. With that settled, all that remained was to deploy units and use them. The Lurgen Kampfgruppe on the outskirts of the capital. That's just enough. No, that's cutting it too close. We need more. That's the bare minimum but far from satisfactory. Gather the necessary playing pieces and position them as needed. Those are the basics and the building blocks for any strategy. As his thoughts turned to balancing out the forces, RUDERSDORF continued making smooth progress. Understanding which pieces are useful and how to best use them is the greatest specialty of those in the field of operations. With a traditional concentration of assets, it was easy to scrape together what was needed. We do have the expeditionary armies stationed on the southern continent. The staffer's management style resulted in detailed knowledge of even the temperaments of the commanders. That's what made the staff officers and why the general staff was such an intense, exclusive, privileged group. Rommel would be able to. Probably. In fact, there's no doubt. He had a record and career that inspired confidence. Most importantly, the man had more than enough motivation. Right? It was there that the ethical argument finally entered RUDERSDORF's mind. The emotions he had been ignoring until now were screaming their refusal. A surgical measure? That's unacceptable. I guess I'm finally so tired that I'm starting to become delusional. A member of the general staff, trying to find a way to turn on the institutions of the fatherland. If the staff officers present during the founding of the state could see what he was thinking, they would surely run a saber through him without waiting for an explanation. And it would be only natural, given their oath of loyalty and honor would be at stake. This was treason, plain and simple. Even as a daydream, it was an unacceptable act of insubordination. This is twisted even for me. This wasn't the path of an officer. This grouped him with the likes of politicians, or perhaps those damnable communists. It's nothing more than a contingency plan. He wasn't taking it seriously, but merely toying with the idea as an intellectual exercise for a true last resort. Yes, that's all it is. A weary mind sometimes comes up with absurd ideas. The possibilities he could entertain were too tempting. The phrase fundamental solution danced in the back of his mind. Reason screamed at him that it was suicide, but his exhausted brain was charmed by the idea nonetheless. He could only smile and admit he was out of moves. A lack of sleep is dangerous for the mind. If only I could laugh off the things that are bothering me. For better or worse, his spiraling thoughts were interrupted by an abrupt knock on the door. Glancing at the clock on his desk, he saw that though a bit later than he had expected it was time. "Beg your pardon, sir, but Lieutenant Colonel de Geerchaff is here." RUDERSDORF took a quick, deep breath to prepare his voice. Then, regaining his usual nonchalant tone, he shouted, "Send her in." "Right away, sir." After that spirited exchange, it wasn't long before two sets of footsteps approached. After a foretelling knock, the door opened. The first thing he saw was broken eyes. For a field officer returning from the Eastern Front, the accompanying frame was much too small. A child with the face of a grizzled commander. This was one facet of total war. Puffing a cigar, Rudersdorf called out to his subordinate. "It's been a while, Colonel. Glad to see you hale and hearty." "Greetings, General. Have you lost weight?" Though it hasn't even been that long, Tanya's superior has clearly hollowed out considerably. He must be experiencing major exhaustion and stress. Seeing the unflappable Lieutenant General Rudersdorf looking visibly haggard, Tanya's first words are very poorly thought out. Regardless of whether it's something to say to a person concerned by their appearance, it's generally inadvisable to ask someone so obviously exhausted if they've lost weight. Even the mere implication that he's ill or unwell is going much too far. It's the dining hall's fault. I can't bear the food. So the General Staff Office's dining hall is the same as ever? Indeed, Colonel. As you know, it all tastes awful. It's so bad I've a mind to go out for my meals, though I know it's a waste of time. The mud on the Eastern Front tastes pretty good. So good that it gets a rave review from you? Of course, sir. Allow me to elaborate. One mouthful is so stunning you won't feel like eating for days. If the mud is that great, the people of the Federation must be loath to share. Don't worry, sir. They're communists, so they'll feed us as much as we like. It's fortunate to have a superior who has a sense of humor about this. They offer so much that even the aerial mages have trouble clearing their plates. Frankly, I'm concerned we may end up overweight. Showing restraint is difficult business. It's fairly amusing to imagine Zetter coming back fat from the east. A light jab. A joke that leans on their mutual acquaintance. It's so peaceful and civilized that, frankly, if we weren't at war, it would be delightfully businesslike. Having sufficiently broken the ice, Tanya gets right to the point to avoid repeating her earlier blunder. Blowing up Supreme Command. I heard about it unofficially via Colonel Lurgen of all people and, Tanya has to come right out and say this, so he doesn't suspect her of snitching. Feigning ignorance is just a means to get confirmation. To avoid overtly implying anything, a careful tone is critical here. It might seem like an unnecessary hassle, but going through your superior is the most basic way of avoiding trouble in pretty much any organization. As far as I can tell, no one wreaks more havoc than the incompetent worker who fails to communicate through the proper channels. In any case, the response Tanya gets is somewhat expected. Are you insinuating that I gave that preposterous order?
Me?
The senior officer is wearing a bewildered expression. But anyone can pretend to be shocked.
Umans Liechtenstein.
They even do it in private and, at times, lie to themselves. So, when necessity demands that a good worker speak falsehoods, it's only natural to be met with a parade of sincerely told lies. An inability to catch the subtle intent in your superior's words will eventually end with crashing into a glass ceiling partway up the promotion ladder. Splattering yourself on the wall is already bad enough, but if you aren't into being scraped off with heavy-duty cleaner and put on display as an example for everyone else, then you have to use every bit of brain power. It was intimated to me that such a plan existed. So Colonel Lurgen's learned how to tell bad jokes now? That's not very smart, but progress is progress. The winds of Ildoa and the East must have worked wonders. That was supposed to be a joke. From Colonel Lurgen? That's right. It makes sense that you'd be surprised. It seems that the change of pace has been good for him. We should probably recommend it to all our uptight staffers. Regardless of whether that claim is true or not, Rudersdorf is trying to laugh it off. This uncertainty is scary, but it's much better than having it confirmed with a straight face. Things are always better when you can still laugh. If it's that effective, I'd like to go to Ildoa myself. But when I spoke with an Ildoan on the Eastern Front, he didn't seem to have such a splendid sense of humor. He was probably afraid of cracking jokes with an officer as deadly serious as you. Our allies are apparently quite well-mannered. Tanya responds with an amused laugh. What a surprise. I never thought I'd hear you joke like that, General. Ildoa, well-mannered? Is that before or after factoring in the way they claim to be our friends? Mutual understanding is a big step toward compromise. Truly, how blessed we are to have a mediator like Ildoa. That's one way to share your opinion. Anything else, Colonel? His question comes in the guise of banter with a somewhat jocular tone. It should be safe to air out my main concern. Does that mean I can laugh off Colonel Urgen's comments as nonsense? Of course. Even if I were going to give you a crazy order, it's not the right time, not yet at least. To be clear, the General Staff isn't ordering anything of the sort. He really pulled a fast one on me then. It appears I've been careless. Tanya smiles awkwardly in apparent introspection, keeping a close watch on Rudersdorf's expression all the while. Problematically, he has denied it, but it's not a clear denial. After all, he said, not yet. Tanya briefly considers Rudersdorf's comment. He's smiling, and he sounds like he's kidding around, but it's awfully significant that he didn't immediately deny the idea. As a lieutenant general, he should always be clear and resolute. And yet, he's being vague. Even a monkey would understand the part he's not saying. Anybody with a brain could read between the lines here. This is a classic technique for absolving oneself from responsibility while still relaying the all-important intent. It's not a denial. It's a refusal to give a straight answer masquerading as a denial. This pillar of the General Staff, the very general in charge of leading all high-level planning as Deputy Director of Operations, might as well have openly declared that he doesn't approve of how the people he answers to are handling things. That's more than enough evidence of the current discord. A slick of cold sweat coats Tanya's back. This is horrible. Now then, that's enough catching up. Good work out there in the thick of the East. I expect to hear your candid opinion of our situation as someone who recently spent time on the front lines. Yes, sir.
I'm honored.
But we haven't heard what the plan for the East is following Operation Andromeda. I'd appreciate it if you could detail what our strategy will be going forward. Don't sugarcoat it, Colonel. I know you're critical of current policy. You probably want to say the major offensive was a huge failure. Am I wrong? Even Tanya is forced to spit it out when confronted so openly. Well, superficially, we managed to tidy up the lines, though as you point out, it was quite a disaster. As you might imagine, our only real choice is to pull back, lean on the Council for self-government for fighting power, and then do everything we can to secure long-term advantages. A short but firm interjection. The man speaking waves his hands in dismay. I'm not Zetor. Exhaling cigar smoke, Rudersdorf shrugs with good grace and gives Tanya a domineering glare. You're free to state your opinion, I welcome it. But I'm not partial to lengthy arguments. He taps his fingers on the table and pins her down with his gaze. It's not a comforting glance, though, and he's making it clear there is no room for discussion on that matter. I don't want to endlessly debate about premises that don't exist. He knocks the table again to emphasize his objection to futilely expending time and effort. We needn't overexert ourselves, but neither should we waste time. Your conclusion. Give me your conclusion first. General, I'm just a magic lieutenant colonel. Though I've been through staff training, I'm hardly a member of the General Staff. I've served in the field for so long that in this sort of case, you can give me your conclusion, or you can leave. Your choice. It's a blunt response. Faced with such strong will and rock-solid words, I give up on being roundabout. I wanted some plausible deniability, but if the insurance plan costs too much, there's no choice but to brace myself and take the leap. From the beginning, Tanya never had the option to be evasive. Then I'll take advantage of your kindness. What is the objective being asked of us? What is the strategic objective that will allow us to reach our goal of security, the objective the Empire should pursue in this war? The general snorts. Victory. The muttered word inspires confusion. Victory? Even if we're being generous, surely that's the result of the objective. It doesn't actually answer the question of what our strategic objective is. General? I'm telling you it's victory. Don't you understand, Colonel? Repeating it doesn't change anything. It's aggravating to admit, but I have literally no idea what he's getting at. Victory is only ever an outcome. Certainly, it can be considered a wonderful achievement. Tanya has no reason to not love victory as much as the next soldier. And it's only natural that the army would pursue the desirable outcome of victory in war. But what should be pursued in pursuit of that wonderful achievement? That's the key. The same goes for any corporation. It could be new contracts, profit margin, or even the number of business cards received. It doesn't really matter what specifically, but there are goals and standards all employees should strive to meet. The Empire is no exception.
First comes the objective.
You set a goal to pursue the objective, and everyone acts in concert to achieve victory. How can an organization act if it doesn't know what its objectives or goals are? What kind of victory does the government want us to win? I'm ashamed to ask, but how are we defining victory? How many times do I have to repeat myself, Colonel? The victory required of us is victory. Nothing more, nothing less. The general is practically scoffing as he says the nature of victory is self-evident, and I can't detect any hint of deception or doublespeak. What is that supposed to mean? Really, what the hell is going on? This is incredibly unsettling, and through sheer willpower, I managed to pose a single question. Please tell me I'm wrong. General, do you mean the army is only being ordered to achieve victory? That is correct. That was exactly what I didn't want to hear. Who cares how absurd the goal might be? If the Empire and its government would just indicate that we're working toward a goal that had been set to attain the state's overarching objectives, then it would be fine even if it entailed something ludicrous like mass-produce socks or destroy the Federation. But what do we get instead? Supreme Command has ordered General RUDERSDORF to simply achieve victory. Nothing more, nothing less. His only duty is victory?
Impossible.
Tanya's expression twists up as roiling emotions come out in a shout. But that's absurd. That is correct. It's a given that everyone desires a future that contains victory. Winning is the ultimate panacea, after all. But even the best medicine is created to cure a certain disease. If silver bullets exist, how could there possibly be no worthy targets? When you think about it, everything becomes crystal clear. It simply can't be true. Ever since setting foot back in the capital, Tanya's self-restraint has been tested time and time again, but this is the limit. The next words out of her mouth are a scream. Does this mean that Supreme Command hasn't set any strategic objectives at all? That is correct. This isn't normal. Are their brains functioning? Where has raison d'etre gone? The shock is so great that Tanya's ability to maintain appearances goes out the window. Every emotion is plain to see on her face as she casts her gaze to the ceiling. Even if the Federation army burst through the door to attack at this moment, it wouldn't be as shocking as this discovery. The entire state of affairs is unthinkable. There's no other way to describe our current situation. It's like being informed that the crew has vanished from the cockpit mid-flight. No, it's more like getting an in-flight announcement that the cockpit itself has vanished. General, is the situation in the capital that complicated and impenetrable? I just can't understand the reasoning. You're probably tired of hearing this, but that is correct. Colonel, public opinion in the capital has become a monster. His reply nearly makes Tanya appeal to the heavens. The story goes that in the past a Japanese politician decided the situation in Europe was too complicated and mysterious and promptly quit his job. Boy, am I jealous that he had that option. How wonderful it would be if I could run like the wind away from here. If this is how it is, then what was the point of all the suffering the Empire, the Imperial Army, and I personally endured? Why have we been placing so much emphasis on work ethic? I almost want to scream. As if that isn't bad enough, the food situation is appalling, and we have no time and nowhere to spend our salary, which means we're doing work above our pay grade. We're undersupplied, and we're experiencing unprecedented inflation all at once. Given my understanding of the social contract, this is undoubtedly a complete failure to deliver the people's due. Whatever numbskull is responsible should be terminated. Immediately, and with great prejudice. Suddenly, I feel like an explosive accident might just be a great idea. Problematically, it's quite tempting. The slightly relaxed expression that creeps onto the general's face as he chuckles is horrifying. This is funny. This is what gets a laugh out of you. There's little doubt we're awfully close to the boiling point. Let's review the Empire's current situation. I suppose we can say it's suffering a terminal illness in the prime of its life. Unfortunately, no one but the doctor, perhaps not even the patient itself, has any idea how much life it has left. There's no way to nurse it back to health? If the Federation were out of the picture, then maybe a land war. It almost sounds like he's saying we would have a chance. Given that the greatest threat the Empire is facing currently lies in the East, that makes sense. Of course, the dogged persistence of the Federation is what has us in so much agony. So we're supposed to just imagine what life would be like if we could magically have ideal conditions? There's a major issue. Do you think the Krang can take it? I don't know. What? It's painfully obvious that Tanya's confused face makes her look like her brain is missing. But anybody would be confused. The general has morphed into an entity that is totally unpredictable. This is a deviation from the RUDERSDORF of recent memory. Everyone has a general idea of what their superiors are like, and the man before me has taken a major departure from how I normally envision him. I said I don't know. I can't be sure it's impossible, but there isn't any guarantee that it's possible, either. General, then as the army. We're an army that is expected to be capable of winning even without a definition of victory. In light of that, we should be able to handle even the toughest problems. Don't you agree, Colonel? Should I submit him for psychological evaluation? RUDERSDORF is so strange today that a pointless thought crosses my mind. He's desperate. It's a possibility I wish I could dismiss immediately, but when he makes such sarcastic comments, it's hard to not feel depressed. General, I'd like to hear your own thoughts. The Lieutenant General responds with a courteous nod. Our only option in the East is to contract and consolidate. The same goes for the West. All in all, we're headed downhill. He abruptly presents his analysis of the current situation. It's awful to hear, but that's just the reality of what the Empire is facing. At least it's clear my superior grasps the gravity of the challenge before us. Doing something about this mess is my job. I guess I'll start by purging the Krang as needed, though it's not even clear what needs to be removed or how. Purge is an incredibly dangerous word. What is he implying? Unfortunately, interrupting now would be like poking a sleeping dog. As the general answers his own questions mockingly, Tanya smiles in uncertain silence, as is the social norm. Being polite is ultimately about personal safety. I've whined too much, Colonel. No. I feel I've glimpsed a fraction of the weight you are forced to bear, sir. My respect for you and your burden has only grown. This formal exchange needs to be observed thoroughly from start to finish. In an utterly natural manner, Tanya performs a bow as if in awe of him. How very thoughtful of you. I'm sure you could make it as a bureaucrat in the capital. I don't mean that as an insult, mind you. Thank you, Sir. I've noted the Army's opinion of bureaucrats in general. Two sets of hearty laughs echo throughout the room. A mutual enemy is a powerful tool for bringing people together. Handled appropriately, this shared hatred of bureaucracy can make for excellent social lubricant. Well, we can't chat all day. Your unit will be reorganized under Colonel Erosion, is what the official records will say. In reality, it's up to you. As part of your leave, the Kampfgrupp's artillery and infantry components will be stationed in a port city. When the time is right, Colonel Erosion will be formally transferred back to the General Staff.
À promotion.
Man, even in these trying times, the Colonel with strong ties to Central nets another sweet deal. Not only has he accumulated human capital, but also he's blessed with social capital as well. That's right. As for the armored and mage units, we'll have them reorganize on the outskirts of the capital. Any hope for replacement mages? Don't expect any. Not that I anticipated a different reaction. There was a faint hope, but as expected, it's not happening. We've been dealing with a chronic shortage of mages fit for the front lines for some time now. I'll be straight with you. We're already doing you a favor by not pulling any from your unit. With the knowledge that I'm being presumptuous, my Kampfgruppe, to say nothing of the 203rd Aerial Mage Battalion, is a quick reaction force equipped with a Type 97 computation orb at its core. If I could humbly request special consideration in order to maintain and develop our force. Don't push your luck, Colonel. We're at our limits. So we're out of recruits of even First Lieutenant Westman's caliber? Apparently, even insisting isn't going to produce results. Mage units are overly reliant on individual resourcefulness and ability. In a total war where massive losses are a given, finding capable replacements is a Herculean challenge. The fact that we're basically out of mages who can operate a Type 97 is a chilling thought.
Ha.
Tanya suppresses a sigh. Apparently, experienced aerial mages, Tanya included, are a precious commodity now. Going forward, we'll be used with ever greater care while being worked to the bone till we're ground to dust. Man, I really miss the labor standards guys. Back in the day, I admit that I thought they were just naggy and obnoxious, but what I wouldn't give to see them now. Thanks for coming. I'm sure I'll be hearing from you again at some point. Until then, discuss the details with Colonel Lurgen. Yes, sir. I'll be going then. When Tanya exits the office, she finds Colonel Lurgen has been waiting for her. Colonel, do you have a moment? He asks. Let's take a little walk. The way he sets off without waiting for her response indicates that he fully expects her to follow as a matter of course. That's slightly insulting, but, well, considering the gap in their ranks and her position, Tanya has no choice but to go with him. Luckily, Lurgen isn't so far gone that he fails to be considerate about the difference of their strides and thoughtfully matches her pace. Naturally, he must want to talk about something. As expected, he feigns casual conversation while launching into his main purpose. I assume you heard it with your own ears, Colonel. Very unfavorable. With a pained wince, the esteemed Colonel continues. This is the general state of things everywhere. It's hard to believe. You should familiarize yourself with public opinion, Colonel de Geerchaff. I've been in the capital for a long time. Even so, I'm constantly astonished at how much the army's estimation of things differs from everyone else. To you, it might sound like they're coming from another world. He probably hadn't given the remark much thought, but to Tanya, someone literally from another world, it's quite thought-provoking. Oh dear, I'll be talking to beings from another world, huh? It makes sense that the implication is lost on him. For a moment, it almost makes perfect sense. With a complete breakdown in common language, perhaps creating another world is surprisingly simple. Ha! Another little sigh slips out. I wonder what language I should speak in. The language of the Reich should work, no? Of course. Speaking the Reich's language in another world.
Wow.
I'm deliberating on what language from another world I should use to speak to people from another world in another world. Am I having a stroke? Maintaining my sanity is probably only going to get harder from here on out. If it weren't for that damned being X, this never would have happened. I'm definitely going to make that bastard pay.